And someone that I've come across many, many times in my travels and my work around the UK and beyond is my guest on the show today. He is a self-professed selfie king, and if you get a chance to check out his social media, we'll be sharing those links with you in just a moment. But he is someone who really does embody the ideas of having a great professional learning network, that PLN, someone who is really considered and measured in his thinking around the use of technology in the classroom, and somebody who comes from a technical background as well, but is definitely a firm favourite with the teachers he regularly shares with on social media, and he's a real giver as well. I think, for example, just this week, he shared a fantastic little resource to try and draw people's attention to the importance of being safe when online and looking at phishing scams and all these different things. He really does embody the ideas of a modern educator when it comes to thinking about engaging with and working with young people. So someone I massively respect, as you're probably getting from my introduction. So without giving his name away until this moment, it's my great pleasure to welcome onto Tip Top Tips Edu in this episode, the one and only Mr. Abid Patel. Welcome to Tip Top Tips Edu, Abid. Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing with us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm doing well, thanks, Mark, and thank you for having me.
No, you're very, very welcome. And as I said, I really respect the approaches that you advocate for and the things that you share. You're definitely someone who tries to amplify best practice and provide support for others. I know when I've had questions in the past around things, you're very happy to jump in and sort of feed in. And what's nice as well is actually often some of the things that you're sharing are things that I would share as well. So there's a lot of not echo chambery, but good reinforcement of sort of litmus tests, as it were, for balance checking some of the things that I'm sharing as well. So I'm really excited to sort of get you to share on the show on this episode. For those that don't know you, Abid, though, could you just take a moment just to share a little bit about who you are and what your role is in education? Is that okay?
Yeah, so I'm an IT director of a multi-academy trust, and I've been working in EdTech now for 18 years. This will be my 18th year, and I started back in 2004, fresh out of university, looking for a job, and somehow ended up in a school by chance through an observational program that the university were doing to sort of get us interested in teaching and learning. And I kind of went into in the dark direction, as it was back then, into IT. So started off as an IT technician and was a technician for 10 years, and then joined my current organisation, and we went through from transition of primary school through to multi-academy trust. And I've worked my way up as a network manager, and now to be IT director for the trust.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. There's a lot of experience in that side of things. Just jumping into, as I shared before, you do share a lot through social media, and I always remember the video you shared when you got to learn that you were going to be part of the sort of Google certified group. You were home alone, and you had no one to share it with. So there's a video of you dancing around your house when you got your results and stuff. But that idea about sharing, there aren't many people in your kind of, there are plenty of teachers on Twitter, but I do know a few people in similar roles to you, from Peter Horner, for example, to some of the guys from the ANME and so forth and so on. But you don't see many people like yourself sharing on social media. What sort of drives you to share like you do using Twitter and be involved with Edu Twitter?
I think for me, it started off as a very personal thing. I joined Twitter in 2011, and that was having learned about Twitter through a radio show that I used to listen to, and they used to use Twitter as sort of a way of communicating, getting in touch with the presenters in the show, and stuff like that. And then for me, then Twitter also became it became the best customer service thing. So my eggs were damaged in my in my Tesco delivery, and so it was like, you suddenly you tweet about it, and then they give you like £30 worth of vouchers. So this is quite useful. And where the edtech and the education perspective of Twitter came in for me really was working as an IT professional in schools. It's a very lonely role and a very, I wouldn't say unappreciated, but it's a role that people don't really understand, because a lot of what we do is very, very behind the scenes, very invisible. And so there was sort of never any understanding, or never the understanding that we wanted to have as to what we do. So I remember just something random that I tweeted out about what we were doing, what I've done today, and it was probably purely a technical thing. I couldn't even tell you what it was now, but and then I suddenly saw traction. Up until then, all of my followers on Twitter were family and friends, and then suddenly I get random strangers who I didn't know but were working in schools who started to then follow me and say, "Yeah, thanks for sharing that." And I found there was so many things that I have learned over the years that I just took for granted. Keyboard, you put something out the other day about shortcuts, and keyboard shortcuts, which I've completely learned by mistake, or I'd read about it somewhere, and those have become integral parts of what I do on a daily basis. And you'd think I'd tweet about it, or I'd say that, "Oh, did you know that you could do the shortcut?" And suddenly everyone's like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing." And you think, doesn't everyone just know this as like I do? And you realize that no, we take for granted what we've learned and picked up over the years. And I think that's what led to me to sort of share everything that we do. And I say to people who want to get into Twitter, we all doing amazing things, but we're very insular in celebrating that. And we've got Twitter. It's an amazing global platform. Let's use it to showcase the wonderful things that we're doing to the whole world.
Brilliant, thank you for sharing. And so it's a similar sort of thinking to myself as well. You sort of think, taking one keyboard shortcut, for example, of like Windows Shift S, let's say, or your various sort of snipping keyboard shortcuts, or like Control Shift T to bring up a closed tab in your browser. People look at you like they think you're like Merlin or something, don't they? Because it's like, wow. But sharing these things can be so helpful and useful. But jumping into the sort of first sort of more meatier question, often I'm going to be quite sort of generalistic in my sort of speaking here, but there can often be a disconnect, and often because, like you said in your introduction, because people don't often understand the work that you're doing, and sort of like quite hidden in the background and things. But the relationships between educators, between teachers, and technical staff, there can often be a disconnect in between, and sometimes teachers will come to you and ask you for X, Y, or Z. I said he wants something in their classroom, and you have to explain why that isn't possible. Have you got any, because this is top tips, have you got any sort of tips for how to both sort of develop relationships with teachers in the school, and also how to explain things and make it so they understand when things won't work, when you can't do the thing for them that they really would want to yourself, in terms of how to sort of broker those conversations?
Yeah. If you look at any IT technician job description, or any IT professional job description for education these days, one of the key things that it usually says is being able to communicate and translate technical queries to key stakeholders in non-technical terminology. And I think historically, I think a lot of IT professionals had a very sense of, almost like, not everyone's like that, but there's that temptation to sort of raise your own importance by, oh yes, it's your computer wasn't working because the DNS server wasn't correctly assigning IP addresses, and your system's network card was incorrectly configured. And what you fail to realize is that you completely lose the person that you're trying to explain the issue to when you're doing that, but you're also then getting them rather annoyed, you know. And you know, I've learned along that journey that, you know, there were these sort of unhidden rules with regards to working as IT in schools, and the golden rules were teachers are the greatest of all evils, and you should never go out of your way to help teachers because they will just take advantage of you, and they don't respect you because they don't understand what you do, and so you need to do the same back. And you put that brick wall up, and you think to yourself that's, you know, the realization comes very quickly that this is not sort of the way to go for us, and we're never going to sort of achieve anything when we do this. And you know, breaking down those barriers, making it so that you can help people to understand the why behind what we're trying to do, but in layman's terms, shall we say, in non-technical terminology, in the communication that everyone understands, and that is, you know, how to help to foster those relationships. So, you know, understanding that I don't know everything there is to know about teaching and learning. Yes, I've learned a lot over the 18 years that I've been working in schools, but likewise, not everyone knows all of the stuff, you know, the stuff that we sometimes get accused of. We sit in that dark room with that big, massive server over there. And, you know, what does that server do? Why is that server the sole brain of the school's network? And, you know, why do you need a server? Who has a server at home? Not many people have servers at home. You know, you have your individual device, whether it be a laptop or a Mac or a Chromebook or even a tablet. That doesn't have a server, does it? You're connecting to the internet. What you don't realize is when you're connecting to the internet, you are connecting to somebody else's server. You're just not connecting to your own server or the organization's server. And I think it's just helping everyone to understand that things work differently in the organization than they work in the home. And there's a lot of complexities that come around that. And it's not putting barriers up there. And I think what's always key is something that I was taught by a previous line manager is try as much as possible to be solutions focused. So the answer is not no, but here's an alternative, or I will go and try my best to find an alternative for you. But or, you know, try to make what you're asking for work. But it's not, it doesn't tend to be or can be an immediate thing, but we will try to get it to work because we understand everyone's stress. We understand when you're trying to do something, you need to get it done. And so that's why I think that's what it is. It's just about communication. And to this day, I think communication is probably the key part of my job, is just ensuring that we're communicating with each other at every step of the way and at every level, not just leadership level or at middle leader level or at teacher level, teaching assistant level, all across the board, helping everyone to understand. Because once you have everyone on board and they've been given the right communication, it makes things so much easier.
I completely agree, and it goes to, like you said, that idea of sort of fostering those positive relationships, isn't it? And you know, with my educator hat on for a second, it's so important when it comes to engaging with children and families around their education and their progress and all these sort of things. So, by the same token, it's important to involve, you know, all the stakeholders in the things that you're trying to do to help understand. Before we went live, we were talking about the importance of strategy, but going back to that adage from Peter Drucker back in the 80s, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And you're not going to get that culture without the buy-in from your staff and the positive relationships. And so you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have buy-in from your staff, then it's not going to work in the slightest, is it? So have you got any other tips about how to sort of foster those positive relationships with colleagues?
Yes, I think the signposting thing, the social media thing, I think that's been that's really helped me in my organization. And I found a lot of educators that I work with are very afraid of social media because, you know, you hear about social media and you hear about the negativity, about people being racist on social media and the cancel culture and that kind of stuff. And everything you always hear about in the media about social media is very toxic and very, I don't want to go anywhere near that. And when the safeguarding aspect comes into it, it's all about online safety and it's all about the dangers of social media. But I think something we've learned in the Edu Twitter space, I think, is how wonderful social media can be when it's used in the right manner, and I think that's where it's really helped me to break down those barriers. Where it's where my colleagues don't necessarily have the time or the opportunity to investigate the new things that are out there. I'm able to do that. I have the opportunity. And then I have the passion as well to do that. And I get the opportunity to go to conferences and connect with other people and see all of the things that are out there. And I think bringing that back in, and then not just holding that information to yourself, sharing that information and saying, oh, by the way, Mr. Geography teacher, I've seen this great resource that someone who follows me on Twitter is sharing about how they've talked about, I don't know, the latest earthquake that happened and how they addressed that in that situation with their children. And there's a great resource here. Here you go. And immediately, that geography teacher might be someone that I've barely ever spoken to unless the interactive whiteboard isn't working or something. And suddenly you've bought them something of interest. You've not been the guy, you've not been solely the person who's just come to fix their issue. You bought them something of interest that could help to make their life a lot easier in something that they're delivering. And so I think that that's one of the key things that has helped me is not taking the knowledge for granted and just sharing everything, no matter how silly I think it is. Sometimes I put tweets out and think, really, before I press tweets, like, really, is anyone going to get any benefit out of this? And sometimes I can spend hours thinking, how am I going to put a tweet together and get maybe 1 or 2 likes? And then I spend a few seconds putting a tweet together about, let's just tweet it out. And then suddenly it's like 500 likes. And you realize that it's almost like the potential is completely skewed, but the amazing thing that has, I mean, so many of my PLN, my professional learning network, are people who I've never met before, but some of these people are my closest friends now because they see the value in, I see the value in what they share and they see the value in what I share. And I think that really helps when you bring that back internally into the organizations that you work with. That can really help to break down barriers where people haven't had the opportunity to go down these paths and explore this amazing potential that's out there.
No, I definitely agree, and I mean, you could be sort of sharing our story in a bromance sort of kind of a way, because so we connected for a long time and shared on social media before we ever actually met, and then boom, there we are. I mean, we do have a bit of a rivalry when it comes to the whole selfie thing. I remember the thing at Bet a few years ago, seeing if you could get the most selfies. But again, it linked into one of the questions I got for you as well, Abid, because it's again those connections, isn't it? Those relationships that are so important. And the great thing about using social media, I think it reflects the best of society. I talk about Twitter being like the best staff room in the world, and certainly, there have been times when I've really needed some advice and some help, some support, and if you've got a truly global PLN, doesn't matter whether it's 1 in the afternoon or 1 in the morning, there are people who will respond to you. And it's like, if you do a Google search around a problem, you'll get, with my teacher hat on, you'll probably get, the first few pages being TES resources. For yourself, it might be some things from Edu Geek or the ANME or whoever, those sorts of people. But it's just so powerful, isn't it? It links into it being really important to sort of build those friendships and those relationships, which ultimately, helps with your professional learning, and ultimately helps you not only do your job better, but serve the children in your community better. And surely that's got to be a good thing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think coming back to the selfie thing, I think it's. A picture speaks 1,000 words, isn't it? It's that everyone likes, even with the tweets, Twitter is full of text, but everyone loves the images and the infographics. And I think that's where that power really comes in, is just sharing stuff in a very visual way. We're, as human nature, we're very visual people, and we read all day long, and that can sometimes text on a screen, whether it's black writing on a white piece of paper or white text on a black background, it can get lost, and you don't tend to get tone come through as well, in email communication and stuff, which is why, we're still, even through the pandemic, these virtual connections, be it virtually, either via Zoom or Google Meet or Teams or StreamYard and YouTube, whatever, that's helped to keep those relationships fostered, shall we say. And I think that's where the picture speaks a thousand words thing comes in. And the selfie thing, everyone loves to see that visual aspect of who you are, as opposed to just learning who you are just through what someone else has told you, or what you've written about yourself, should we say.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I can't remember the exact statistic, but I mean, it'll go to why platforms like Instagram and TikTok are so powerful, isn't it? Because it's the visual part of it, isn't it? But I read a statistic once that tweets with an image have something like 70 to 80% more engagement than those without, and it's obvious to understand, isn't it? And what's also nice as well then is you've got the memory of the experience and things as well. You can it imprints that and the person and the engagement far more in your mind as well. I'm mindful we're ticking along with our time, Abid. I've got one final question for you now. We've talked quite a lot about using Twitter as a resource, and we're definitely on the same page when it comes to those sort of things. But what resources are there out there for collaboration or just as resources for technical IT staff that you'd recommend? Is there anything out there that, I've mentioned Edu Geek and ANME, and I'm sure you probably want to mention those, so I don't want to sort of give you all the answers and take all your sort of points away. But have you got any sort of pointers and places that you think would be useful, and maybe a few people that might be good to connect with as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think the one that you mentioned there, Edu Geek, is Edu Geek. I think the tagline that goes with Edu Geek is the IT education pros lifeline, and I think that is really, really key. I joined Edu Geek back in 2005, and I remember at the time there was no network connectivity between, no pun intended there, no sort of people connectivity, shall we say, between IT professionals at all. I didn't know anyone, even in my own local area of East London. I didn't know any other IT professionals working in schools. I'd pick up the phone and try to call an IT technician in another school or a network manager in another school and ask a question as to, look, I've got this challenge. Just any idea how you would solve it? Because we're all dealing with the same fundamental issues here, aren't we? And it'd be so difficult to get in touch with someone. And I found Edu Geek totally by mistake through a spam message that I received about another site that doesn't exist anymore. And I got somehow referred to Edu Geek by someone on the other site, and I joined. And Chris Byers, who's the owner of Edu Geek, he's become a really good friend, and I think it's amazing the potential that is on that forum just for supporting purely IT professionals. And I've already said how much of a lonely place IT and education can be, and that is a real amazing avenue out there to just being able to connect with people who understand exactly what it is you do. You go out. I've got lots of friends and family who work in the corporate world in IT, and the corporate IT world is so different that sometimes I'll be speaking to family and friends. I've got this problem, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, just do this and just do that," and I'm like, I don't have any of that option in education. It's totally different. It's a different world. I remember years and years ago when I was looking for a job, just trying to get more money, quite literally, I'd be phoning up recruiters and they'd be, what are you, first line support, second line support, or third line support? First being taking the phone call, second being a bit of investigation, and third being the high level engineer that deals with the problems. And I'm like, I'm all of them. And they're like, what are you talking about? How many users do you support? I'm like, I support about 1,500 users. And how many of you in the team? I'm like, one, just me. And they just put the phone down because they're like, you're a liar, and slam. But that is the realization. And I'm now hiring for an apprentice. And when I call the apprenticeship organizations, they say that education is a humongously powerful testbed, because you need to be a jack of all trades. You need to understand every aspect there is to know about IT before you then hopefully go out into the real world, shall we say, and then work on that specialization. And I think Edu Geek is, I cannot say how much Edu Geek has been such a support to me, being able to share that. And if you are an IT professional, you're listening to this and you're not part of Edu Geek, go there now, edugeek.net, sign up. It's absolutely free. But there are so many powerful conversations happening there. You could spend weeks, months, years through the content that I've been there since 2005, and there are still things that I learned on there that has been there from years and years and years that I just haven't come across. The ANME, again, is a really nice, powerful one, the Association of Network Managers Working in Education. And it's a much smaller community, but a lot of the community crossover with Edu Geek, and that's a really strong community of really passionate IT professionals who are working in education. But I also implore IT professionals. I don't see enough IT professionals on Twitter, on Edu Twitter, and I'd love to see more and more. Just a few names. You mentioned Peter Horner, who who's doing amazing things at his further education institution, and supporting thousands and thousands of students and teachers. You've got Dave Leonard, my fellow Google Innovator buddy, Dave Leonard, who's now the IT director at Watergrove Trust. Up in the Northwest, and again, he's doing amazing things, supporting. And he's, if you ever get a chance to speak to Dave, I look up to Dave. Just some of the things he loves to get stuck in, and he gets really, really involved with the teaching and learning side of things. And he's such a powerful resource to tap into with regards to just even delivering the teaching and learning. And it's such a skill that a lot of IT professionals in education don't have. But there are so many amazing people out there, and feel free to connect with me on Twitter, and I can point you in the right direction. But absolutely, I think those three areas will be more than enough for what people need to know to sort of get in and help to build those PLNs, because it makes your life so much more easier, just dealing with the day-to-day.
Great stuff, and some fantastic shout outs there from Dave Leonard to ANME to Edu Geek to Peter, and I say so much more as well besides. We're out of time, unfortunately, Abid, but thank you very much indeed for taking some time out of your very busy day to come and share. As you can see, has been scrolling across at the sort of the bottom as the episode's been going on. Abid's Twitter is Abid_Patel. That's going across just at the moment. And you can learn more about Abid on his website, which is abidpatel.com. But for me now, Mark Anderson and Abid joining us, just want to say thank you very much for joining me, Abid. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Tip Top Tips Edu. Hope there's some good takeaways for you there. I definitely think there are. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, Abid. And we'll see you on the next episode of Tip Top Tips Edu very, very soon. Thanks a lot and take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.